You don't lose respect in a single collapse. You lose it in whispers, in sighs, in that slight shift in someone's eyes when they realize you're not who they thought you were. Not because you did something big, but because you kept doing something small. You spoke when you should have listened. You blamed when you should have owned it. And worst of all, you never noticed when people started to back away. So, ask yourself, how many quiet exits have you already caused without even realizing? Most people don't wake up one day and decide to ruin their own reputation. It happens slowly, through habits, through patterns, through moments we call just being ourselves, but are really cracks in character. We all want to be respected, but too often we undermine ourselves before anyone else even gets the chance. And respect, it's fragile. It doesn't explode, it evaporates. The Stoics didn't care much about appearances. They didn't waste time explaining who they were. They simply acted and let the silence speak for them. To them, respect wasn't something you asked for. It was something you became, not through speeches, not through charm, but through consistency, through the discipline of showing up, of doing what you said you would, of living in a way that didn't need to be defended. Because at the end of the day, people don't respect what you promise. They respect what you repeat. There are habits we carry that silently erode how others see us. Not because we're bad people, not because we intend harm, but because we haven't paid attention, we haven't cleaned the mirror. You think you're trustworthy, but you share a secret the moment you get bored. You think you're dependable, but your commitments collapse when they become inconvenient. You think you're empathetic, but you interrupt people mid-pain just to share your own story. It's not malice, it's mindlessness, and the Stoics saw that as a kind of quiet self-betrayal. They didn't need a word for it, because every time you acted without integrity, you were already weakening your own foundation. Today, we're going to confront 5 of these habits. 5 small, socially acceptable patterns that, if left unchecked, will quietly dismantle how others experience you. Not in loud, dramatic ways, but in the silence that builds between you and them, drop by drop. Each habit will be uncomfortable, not because it's unfamiliar, but because, deep down, you already know you're guilty of at least one of them. This isn't about shame, it's about awareness. Because what you don't recognize, you can't change. And change is possible, not through guilt, but through consistency. So let's begin. Let's start with the most normalized and the most corrosive. The first sign is gossip. Gossiping is the one sin that feels the most social and yet is the most isolating. Because when you gossip, you think you're connecting, but you're actually corroding every connection you have. Slowly, quietly, permanently. No one calls you out. No one stops you mid-sentence. They just adjust. They learn not to tell you certain things. They smile but stop trusting. And eventually, they pull away. You don't even realize it's happening. Because on the surface, gossip feels harmless. It's just talk, just fun, just sharing. Until it's your name being passed around. Until you become the story. There was a girl I knew in school. Quiet, kept to herself. Didn't wear what everyone else wore. Didn't talk the way we did. She made the mistake of trusting one of us with a crush she had. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet confession. One small truth. That truth turned into a joke. The joke turned into a story. And the story, it spread faster than anyone expected. She never yelled. She never fought back. She just stopped showing up, stopped speaking, stopped smiling. And when I saw the look in her eyes the last time we crossed paths, I didn't see anger. I saw betrayal. A silent kind, the kind that leaves no room for apology. I used to tell myself, it's just conversation. But what is a reputation if not the sum of all conversations about you? The Stoics were brutally clear on this. Keep silence for the most part, and speak only when you must, and then briefly. Epictetus. Gossip isn't just noise. It's poison. It leaks into trust, waters down integrity, and makes people wonder, if they talk about others like that, what do they say about me? Years later, I made the same mistake again, this time at work. A colleague, serious, private, had been struggling with an illness. He didn't tell many people. Somehow the news reached me. And what did I do? I passed it along, not out of concern, out of curiosity. He found out, of course. He didn't yell, didn't even raise his voice. He just looked at me and said, "I told you because I thought you'd respect my privacy." That sentence cut deeper than any insult, because he was right, and there was no excuse. After that, everything changed. The meetings felt colder. His trust was gone, and it never came back. And that's what gossip does. It gives you 5 minutes of attention and takes away 5 years of trust. You want to be respected? Then don't be the person who trades secrets for closeness, because the ones who do are never trusted for long. The Stoics didn't value being liked. They valued being reliable. They understood that speech is a choice and silence a virtue. So the next time you feel tempted to say, "Did you hear about?" Pause. Ask yourself, what am I building with this sentence? Or better yet, what am I destroying? Gossip destroys trust in silence. But it's not the only habit that does. Some betrayals don't come from what you say, but from what you fail to do. The second habit is being unreliable. It doesn't always look like betrayal. It often hides behind smiles, soft apologies, and calendar excuses. But make no mistake, it's one of the fastest ways to lose someone's trust. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in a slow, invisible erosion. You say you'll be there, and then you're not. You promise to help, and then you disappear. You commit, but only when it's convenient. At first, people forgive. Then they flinch every time they hear your name. Eventually, they stop asking you for anything. Not because they hate you, but because they've finally accepted the truth. You're unreliable. I used to be that person. The one who always meant well but rarely followed through. I'd say yes to everything, trying to seem helpful, dependable, generous. But in reality, I was scattered, overcommitted, and under-delivering. I thought my enthusiasm made up for my flakiness. But enthusiasm doesn't carry weight. Consistency does. There was a friend, someone who genuinely believed in me. She spent weeks planning an event, something important to her. She invited only a few people. I was one of them. And I told her I'd be there. I promised. But on the day of the event, I got distracted. Something else came up. Nothing urgent, just something easier. So I skipped it. Sent a half-hearted text, hours late. When I finally heard her voice, it wasn't angry. It was quiet, flat, like something had gone missing. And something had, her trust. She stopped, including me after that. Not out of revenge, but because the emotional math no longer added up. The Stoics spoke often of integrity not as a virtue of speech, but of alignment. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius. To say you'll show up and not show up is not just a scheduling issue. It's a fracture in character. And people feel that, even if they don't say it. Even if they smile and say, "It's okay." They remember. Another time, at work, I overloaded myself. said yes to 3 projects when I had the bandwidth for 1. I missed deadlines, gave excuses, tried to charm my way out. But charm doesn't complete deliverables. And no one wants to depend on someone who's always full of reasons. In my next performance review, my manager didn't sugarcoat it. You're smart, you're talented, but no one knows if you'll actually deliver. That was the wake-up call. Because unreliability doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're unproven. And when the stakes are high, no one bets on the unproven. So, how do you fix it? You start small. Say less, but mean every word. Promise less, but fulfill more. And if you truly can't follow through, you communicate early, clearly, respectfully. Because every time you break a promise, even a small one, you train people to expect disappointment from you. And no one respects what they expect to disappoint them. The Stoics believed that your word was not just a signal, it was a stake. Something to be planted, something to build on. So next time you say, "I'll be there," ask yourself, if this were the only thing they remembered about me, would I still say it? Some habits don't sound disrespectful. They sound enthusiastic. They sound driven. They sound like you care. But when you look closely, they reveal something else: ego. The third habit is interrupting others. It's one of the most common and most overlooked signs of subtle disrespect. Because when you constantly interrupt someone, you're not just finishing their sentence, you're erasing their presence. You're saying, "What I have to say matters more. Your moment is just a pause in mine. I'm already preparing my response while you're still opening up." I used to think interrupting was a strength. It showed energy, passion, intelligence. I thought it proved I was engaged. But what it actually proved was that I couldn't shut up, that I wasn't listening, that I only valued thoughts that came from me. There was a team I worked with early in my career. We had weekly brainstorming sessions, and every time someone spoke, I had an idea, a solution, a better version. So I'd cut in, not out of rudeness, I told myself, but out of contribution. Until one day, my manager stopped the meeting cold. She looked at me calmly, directly, and said, "You're not listening. You're just waiting for your turn to speak. No shouting, no drama, just truth, sharp as a blade." Afterwards, a colleague pulled me aside. "You're smart," she said, "but it feels like you only hear yourself." That stung more than any formal feedback ever could. And it didn't stop there. A few months later, I was at a quiet bar with friends. One of them, usually the silent type, was finally opening up. He was sharing something raw. His anxiety, his fear of not being enough. His voice was steady, but you could feel the weight in each word. Halfway through, I did what I always did. I jumped in. I said, "I totally get it. I went through the same thing when..." He stopped me, mid-sentence, not angrily, just quietly. "Can I finish?" 4 words. And the entire mood shattered. I thought I was relating, but I was hijacking. I thought I was building connection, but I was stealing the moment. That night, I didn't sleep well, because I finally understood. Interrupting isn't a behavior, it's a pattern. And like most bad patterns, it comes from fear. Fear of silence. Fear of not being heard. Fear that if we don't speak now, we'll disappear. But silence isn't absence. Silence is strength. It's the space where people feel seen. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca wrote, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we may listen more and speak less." To interrupt is to break that balance. To impose the self where patience was needed. You want respect? Be the one who waits, who holds space, Who lets someone finish, even if it burns to hold your tongue? Because nothing commands more respect than the person who listens fully and then speaks with weight. So next time you're in a conversation, pause before you respond, not just out of politeness, but out of discipline. Let the silence breathe. Let their words land. And ask yourself, am I here to be heard or to understand? Some people drain a room without raising their voice. They don't insult. They don't gossip. They just complain, constantly, quietly, and it wears everyone down. The fourth habit is complaining. Not the occasional vent, not the honest frustration, but the chronic, unfiltered negativity that seeps into every conversation, the kind that turns problems into identity. I know this one too well. For a long time, I thought complaining was a form of connection, bonding over what sucked, sharing pain to feel less alone. It felt honest, even noble. But there's a fine line between expressing a wound and picking at it every day. I used to work a job that drained me. The hours were long, the management sloppy. I felt overlooked, undervalued, stuck. And so, I talked about it a lot. To co-workers, to friends, to anyone within arm's reach of my frustration. At first, people nodded. They sympathized. They offered advice. But slowly, they started avoiding me. The conversations grew shorter. The texts took longer to come. And eventually, one friend said it outright, "I care about you." But lately, being around you feels heavy. It's like you're not looking for change. You're looking for an audience. That hit harder than any performance review ever could. Because it was true. I wasn't fixing anything. I was just rehearsing the same script over and over, hoping someone else would change the ending. The Stoics had no patience for this kind of mental loop. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish. Wish for them to happen as they do, and you'll find peace." They believe that complaining is just resistance in disguise, a refusal to accept what is and take responsibility for what can be. I started to notice something. The more I complained, the more helpless I felt. And the more helpless I felt, the less I acted. Complaining became a ritual of powerlessness dressed up as honesty. And it infected my relationships. Because no one wants to sit in a storm that never ends. They'll try, at first. But eventually, they'll find shelter elsewhere. I remember a team project in college. There was one guy smart, capable, but every meeting, he'd find a new thing to whine about. The professor's unfair. The group is lazy. The topic is stupid. At first, we listened. Then we tuned out. By the final week, we just wanted him gone, not because he was wrong, but because he made everything feel worse. And that's the thing. Chronic complaining doesn't inspire empathy. It inspires avoidance. You want respect? Then speak like someone who wants solutions, not sympathy. The moment I started shifting just slightly, things changed. Instead of saying, "I'm exhausted," I'd ask, "What's one thing I can fix today?" Instead of, "This place is a mess," I'd say, "I'll organize what I can control." Not because I became naive, but because I got tired of being tired. The Stoics didn't preach blind optimism. They preached clear action. A relentless focus on what you can do, not endless rumination on what you can't. So next time you feel the urge to unload, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking to release pressure or to avoid responsibility? Because one of those paths leads to change. The other just keeps you stuck. Not every mistake makes people lose respect for you, but refusing to own that mistake, that's where the damage begins. The fifth habit is avoiding responsibility. It's subtle, It doesn't always sound selfish. In fact, it often sounds reasonable. You blame the timing, the environment, the other person's tone. You say, "It wasn't my fault. I was just following orders. I didn't mean to, they took it the wrong way." And maybe you're right. Maybe the situation was unfair. Maybe people did overreact. But here's the hard truth. People don't respect someone who's always the victim in their own story. I know because I used to be that person. Every time something went wrong, I had a reason, a justification, a fallback script that made me look clean, even when I wasn't. Project failed. The brief was unclear. Friendship fell apart. They were too sensitive. Missed a deadline? Well, I'm under a lot of pressure, okay? Excuse after excuse, wrapped in logic. But logic doesn't build trust. Ownership does. The Stoics didn't waste time pointing fingers, because they believed in something more powerful than blame: control of the self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That means this: even when the situation isn't your fault, how you respond to it is. And that's what people respect. Not perfection, but responsibility. There was a moment, a painful one, that exposed this in me. I had just finished leading a team project. Deadlines were missed. The results were sloppy. And when we were questioned about it, I did what I always did. Explained. Rationalized. Deflected. Afterwards, a teammate pulled me aside and said, "You know what's frustrating? It's not that we failed. It's that you made it sound like failure had nothing to do with you." That one stung, because I realized I wasn't just avoiding blame, I was avoiding growth. Every time you dodge accountability, you rob yourself of the chance to evolve. You choose image over character. And eventually, people stop expecting maturity from you. They stop handing you leadership. They stop trusting your words. They start saying things like, "He always has an excuse. She never just says, 'I messed up.'" And when they say that respect is gone, the Stoics taught that your mind is your kingdom. And the first rule of that kingdom? Take full command. Don't surrender your power to excuses. Don't outsource your agency to fate, luck, or how things are. You want to rebuild trust? Then start here. Say, "I was wrong," without a qualifier. Say, "I could have done better," without a deflection. Say, "It's on me," and then fix it. Because that's what earns respect. Not always being right, but being strong enough to take the hit and still stand tall. So the next time things fall apart, don't look for a way out. Look for a way forward. And ask yourself, am I explaining this or escaping it? Because one builds reputation, the other buries it. Respect isn't lost in loud moments. It's lost in patterns. In words you didn't mean but kept saying. In promises you didn't keep but kept making. In silences you didn't hold but kept interrupting. In stories you told that weren't yours to share. In complaints you repeated that masked your refusal to act. It's not that people stopped respecting you overnight. It's that they started collecting little reasons not to. And eventually, they had enough. But the most dangerous part, you didn't notice. Because these habits don't feel toxic. They feel casual, cultural, normal. You laugh with others, not realizing you're building distrust. You cancel once, not realizing it's a message. You interrupt, not realizing you've silenced someone who finally found the courage to speak. You vent, not realizing you've become the storm everyone wants to escape. You explain, not realizing you've never once said, "I was wrong." We talk a lot about how to earn respect from others, but we rarely ask the harder question. Do I respect myself enough to stop doing what's easy? The Stoics didn't teach respect through charisma. They taught it through character. And character isn't built in public. It's built in moments when no one's watching. When you choose discipline over convenience. When you pause instead of reacting. When you apologize without defending. When you speak less so others can speak at all. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But in our time, maybe the better version is, the greatest strength is not to repeat what made you lose respect in the first place. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to erase the past. But you do need to stop making it your future. That means, if you gossip, stop even if it feels like connection. If you cancel often, don't explain, rebuild. If you interrupt, learn silence. Let people finish. If you complain, ask yourself what you're avoiding. If you blame, ask yourself what you're afraid to own. You've seen all 5 habits now. You've seen their consequences not just for others, but for who you become. Because every choice you make shapes not only your reputation, but your identity. Reputation is what others see. Identity is what you see when you're alone. And when those two align, respect follows naturally. You don't need to ask for it. You become it. So here's your turning point. Not in a speech, not in a post, but in your next choice. The next time someone trusts you with their truth, keep it. The next time you say, "I'll be there," show up. The next time you feel the urge to interrupt, breathe, hold. Let their story matter more than your comment. The next time you feel like venting, ask, "What am I really running from?" And when something goes wrong, don't explain. Don't blame. Just say, "I could have done better." Then prove it. Because that's what Stoicism teaches us. Not how to win arguments, but how to win back ourselves. And when you do, you'll notice a different kind of silence around you. Not the silence of distance, but the silence of trust. That moment when someone says nothing because they know you'll follow through. That moment when someone tells you the truth because they know you won't weaponize it. That moment when your presence without noise is enough. If something in this video made you stop and reflect, hit subscribe to continue this journey and leave a comment if one of these habits felt too familiar.